Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of The Expendable Show. I'm your host, The Expendable. Don't mind me. I'm multitasking. I'm watching the Packers and Lions at the same time. I don't like either team, but I'm just happy football's back. The Packers are beating the crap out of the Lions. But if you like the show, like, subscribe, and ding the bell. That's how my channel grows. And this episode is brought to you by Gatsby Trading Solutions. We'll be watching the Atlanta Braves tomorrow play the Seattle Mariners. Hopefully Cal Raleigh hits like 5 home runs. That would be awesome. That guy just hits home runs left and right. But let's go into our stats. So this week, Doge has not changed anything except for on the debt clock. They're at $624 billion and $5,557 per taxpayer. Gas is holding steady at $3.19 a gallon on average. I just had somebody complaining about gas on my TikTok page, and I was like, do you understand, like, the average price of gas in 2024 was $3.30, and you're complaining about lower gas prices? Yeah, I get it. They're not $1.98 or whatever they were under Trump's first term, but it's cheaper now. However, I've noticed that AEP has a huge monopoly going on in the state of Kentucky. I know I talk about Kentucky a lot, but that's the state I'm doing my little investigation in right now. But AEP has virtually no competitor in Kentucky, and they are stroking those people right now, especially in Eastern Kentucky, where the poverty rate's really high. Like, people are not being able to afford to pay their electric bills. So that's my dog's moving. She has anxiety. But there's a huge problem with like the energy cost in Kentucky, and they shouldn't be this high. They're getting ready to raise the kilowatt hours again. So I don't know what's going on down there. It's probably a monopoly because there's no competitor down there. If you go further north into Kentucky, then you start to see other competitors. But in that southeastern part of Kentucky and the southern part of Kentucky, there's virtually no competitors. AEP runs a monopoly down there, and they are really putting a hurt on those people down there. And Kentucky's already, we know from last week's episode, is Kentucky's one of the highest impoverished states in the United States. So, those people down there can't afford to be taking energy hikes every time AEP wants to try to stroke people out of more money. I think they made over $100 billion in profit last year. I think they're good. But that upsets me. Mortgage rate. So in 2024, the average mortgage rate was 6.7%. We are still below that this week. So we're at 6.4%. Still waiting on Jerome Powell to do his half-point cut. It hasn't happened yet, so hopefully he does it. Trump's approval rating is at 45.4%. The Dow Jones closed on Friday at 45,486 cents. So Democrat presidential primary polling. This is for the Ohio primary. So Gavin Newsom's still at 20%. Mayor Pete is at 15%. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, 8%. Tampon Tim, 7%. Kamala Harris, 7%. Bernie Sanders, 7%. Andy Beshear, 4%. Andy Beshear's not going to be a presidential candidate for much longer. I'm going to tell you that. Shapiro, 3%. Booker, 3%. Pritzker, 3%. Pritzker's probably not either. He's a self-saboteur. So, just to keep up, Pritzker's approval rating is 44.1%. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, who he thinks he is just the greatest mayor of all time, but he's at 26%. The Democrat Party's approval rating dropped this week, so they were at 32 point something. Now they're at 31.8% approval. Good job, Democrats. You guys are really resonating with your voter base. This week, big news. President Trump signs executive order to change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War, which sounds awesome. And Pete Hegseth is now the Secretary of War, which is even more awesome. So I support those things. It's funny because the Democrats keep complaining about this stuff, but yet they want to sit out here and they want to try to, cater to masculinity. They want to try to increase masculinity, but then they want to complain about the Secretary of War and the Department of War. How much more masculine can it get? They're just idiots. Like everything that they do when it comes to that kind of stuff, it just blows my mind. They want to promote masculinity, but then they complain about masculine things. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. But that's not every Democrat. That's just that weird base that they have. So let's get into the big story. I had big news personally with this case that I've been working on. We had a huge win this week as part of the investigation, and some of the people that have been helping me out along the way. And I've been naming them all over the place, but I'm not going to name them on the show. Yes, I will. Bonnie White and Rick Kaufman, Bobby Ellison, Jimmy Phelps, some of the people out there that have helped me out along the way. Randall Weddle is the mayor of London, Kentucky. We've talked about him on several episodes. On Friday, he faced the city council in an impeachment hearing. It was presided over by a judge, and they kept the peace. I thought it was very well ran as far as compared to what the city council meeting, because technically it was a city council meeting, but it was just done in a courtroom with a judge presiding over it to keep the peace, because they have been getting pretty crazy. Like the city council, they were live streaming them in the past, and it was like watching Jerry Springer. Literally, like they'd be screaming at each other, like it was crazy. Which I may or may not have had a hand in that a little bit. Anyway, so he was in fact impeached unanimously. He had a lawyer, the city council's lawyer was present, and they did the case and they mapped out the charges. So creators and supporters for Weddle, all the groups that they have, they're confused as to why he's being impeached, and they're blaming the city council for the impeachment. But what they failed to recognize is that Randall Weddle broke laws. He broke procedures in city council, was doing things on his own without city council approval, especially when it came to this $5 million mortgage that he pulled, that he needed city council's approval that he never got. And he went ahead and did it anyway. And that was a big no-no. But we're going to go through the violations of what they found him to be in violation of in his impeachment. Misuse of police resources. He used city's police department and funds for personal protection detail. He had his own security detail. He had cops at his house. He had cops at the mayor's office. He had cops that would go out in public with him. He had cops at his business, WB Transport, wanding people in at a metal detector that were going to work every day. Like, this dude was using and abusing city funds. That's a no-no. You can't do that. Intimidation. He was found in violation of intimidating others using that same protection detail. He showed up to the housing authority to forcefully go in and get the records. And they were scared. The housing authority was scared. He showed up with 5 police officers and demanded to get in. And they had to lock themselves in the housing authority because of the way Randall Weddle does things. And it was a tense situation. They testified to that fact in the impeachment hearing. So he also had a violation of ethics commission's neglect. He failed to fill vacancies in the city's ethics commission in a timely manner. He just refused to do it. He had a certain amount of time to get it done. He didn't do it. And by the time the city council's like, hey, the time for you to nominate people is past, so we got to fill it. And then he got mad because he felt like that's his sole duty. I'm responsible for that. So he was also a failure. He failed to publish ordinances, which is law. You're supposed to do that. He did not host meetings or publish enacted ordinances online as required by law. He had unauthorized financial action. He signed a $5 million mortgage on behalf of the city without council approval. That was a big, big one. Now the state of Kentucky's Attorney General's office has announced on Friday that they are investigating the city. So there's going to be more to be heard on that. So this is basically, let me tell you, because a lot of people don't understand. They think, well, Randall Weddle's been here his whole life. No, he hasn't. He was in Knox County, which is the county next to London. So when you're driving up I-75 and you come across like Corbin, Kentucky is like the border of Knox County and Laurel County where London's at. So if you drive another like mile, well, it's more than that, maybe like another 5-10 miles up the road, then you hit the London exit. So they're right beside each other. But Randall Weddle's originally from Knox County. His whole family's from Knox County. And they're basically from a holler, like up on the side of a mountain. You know, it's one of them things where like half the family lives up on the mountain. I mean, people familiar with Kentucky are familiar with this kind of thing. So how he did this, now there's still a piece of missing part of his life that I have yet to figure out. But this guy went from living in HUD housing to being a billionaire, like in a very, very short amount of time. And so there's a piece of that timeline that I have missing. So I'm not going to talk too much about it until I figure it all out. But this is basically what he did in London. He used his vast wealth to buy his way into the town. He started buying things all over London. He built up businesses to become a staple that many people in the community would depend on, like his WB Transport, which is basically a reverse logistics company. Things that got returned back to Amazon, he would get them and then he would resell them. And he was getting truckloads and truckloads of this stuff, and he would resell them to like, wholesalers and stuff like that. He would make a fortune off of this stuff. But he's linked in with a bunch of other reverse logistics people, so that have their own set of sketchiness. Then he decided, well, I've got this base built up. Now I'm going to cater to like the quasi-liberal middle class of London. So he did. He started doing all these like, things we see in the cities that cater to like the, we're going to have these nice little peaceful things, and which is fine, but it's definitely like he tried to liberalize London. And then he had like a lower class that was close to his inner circle of people that he was related to, or that his wife was related to. And then he bought them or was putting them into positions where they would make more money than what they normally ever have dreamed of. So he did that. That's how he kind of infiltrated the city. The police department. So he started giving off-record bonuses. So the police officers would go out to WB Transport and they'd be given envelopes with cash in it. Because Weddle keeps a large amount of cash on him at his mansion outside of town in Keevee. So there's that. He utilized his family members because as an elected official, you are not allowed to attack your constituency. But he needed to attack his constituency. So because he was getting resistance after the Doug Harless killing, which was the police department of London went outside of their jurisdiction into the county, went to the wrong address, and shot and killed Doug Harless. So when that happened, that changed a lot of things. People were dealing with Weddle at the time, but after that, and Weddle came back and gave no explanation as to nothing. The police was real hush-hush about it. They let the cop, they put him on leave for a short amount of time, but then they let him come back, which is Josh Morgan. Josh Morgan is the shooter of Doug Harless, who in turn his mom is Judy Morgan, who's the code enforcement officer, who also runs an illegal adoption agency in London, who lives with Lonnie Owens, who Lonnie Owens is Randall Weddle's relation. So That's how this whole thing works. It's all a big giant circle. So Weddle's got to cover for Josh Morgan, because if he doesn't, it's gonna piss his close little circle of people off that are related to his wife. So it's a very, very complicated little circle there. But they're all connected to each other. But so what he did was he used his family, like his sister Jen, Lonnie Owens, and all these other people, like in Weddle's little inner circle, to spread as much harassment, hate, and threats out to people as possible. He used his family to do that because he directly could not do it, or he would have been impeached on the spot, probably arrested. So then the police department starts falsely arresting people. They pretty much were arresting people to discredit them. Like, hey, you've been to jail. You've been to jail. Well, if you go look at the Weddles, the whole family's been in jail, including Mayor Weddle. He was arrested for theft and convicted of theft. So your mayor's a thief. Well, he was. He's not the mayor anymore. The police officers are constantly caught on camera beating people at routine traffic stops. Somebody just posted a video just the other day of one. I also have a whole database full of police beatings from that town and other surrounding areas. Then you go to the jail. You get beat in the jail. They just lost a $1 million lawsuit because a kid got beat half to death in the jail, and they sued and won. So, like, this is how Randall Weddle had this area running on an iron fist. And people didn't understand that. And it's not all Randall Weddle. The sheriff, John Root, is just as guilty. But he's been smart about all this and has just kind of got out of the way and let Randall Weddle take all the heat. But he's part of this problem as well. But he at least is smart and has gotten out of the way, and he's got his wife running around on social media playing peacemaker. And it's working. People are softening up to John Root. It's a good strategy, but people aren't going to forget. I think he's liable for the Doug Harless killing simply because it happened in his county, in his jurisdiction, and he has yet to say a word about it. He should have spoke out against the police department. And where I'm from, I remember I was working at a sheriff's office up in Paulding County, Ohio, and the State Highway Patrol pissed the sheriff off one day. And so he put out a memo everywhere that said, the State Highway Patrol is not allowed to come in my county unless I personally give permission. And by law, he's legally allowed to do that. And that's how it was for a while. The State Highway Patrol could not come into the county without asking for permission. So where before they could just roam around. John Root as sheriff did have the power to do that. To at least speak out against the police department for entering the county and unaliving and killing someone that was innocent of this whole thing. They went to the wrong house. The guy they were trying to get was already in jail. So Randall Weddle's also still under investigation for illegal campaign funds to Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Randall Weddle is the top individual contributor to Andy Beshear. So now that he's out of power, Andy Beshear has a very, very tough credibility problem when it comes to accepting money from Randall Weddle. Now Randall Weddle's an impeached mayor that's corrupt, and it's on the books now. So taking money from Randall Weddle is going to be difficult. And Randall Weddle had donated $10,000 to each state's Democrat Party, even though he considers himself a registered Republican. So you have that aspect to consider as well. Andy Beshear is going to have a tough time justifying accepting money from Randall Weddle because now it's going to look like dirty money. And every time Randall Weddle donates to Andy Beshear, I'm going to call it out, and over and over and over again. And I'm going to make sure as I've got a pretty big following in Kentucky now, just about everybody knows who I am. I'm going to make sure every Republican in the state of Kentucky knows that Randall Weddle is giving money to Andy Beshear. He was also buying, and with that $10,000, he was positioning himself for a higher office. So he wanted every state to know who he was, including my state, Georgia, including my home state, Ohio. Money was going there too. So I'm following his money everywhere. He thinks he's slick and that no one's paying attention, but I'm paying attention. So my next target area, now that that's done, I've got something brewing pretty big in Paris, Kentucky, which is a little tiny town just outside of Lexington. So I had made a video, and it was so petty, I don't even remember what it was about. Hey, Rachel. So I had made this I had made this video. I don't remember what it was about. Something petty about affairs or something with the police chief. The police chief of Paris, Kentucky has an affair problem. He's got a bunch of girlfriends. He runs around in unmarked police cruisers, and he's always getting caught on city time sleeping with his mistresses. So I called him out. He got mad. And I was just going to leave it alone because Paris is a tiny, tiny town. I was like, well, there's not going to be a whole lot to really pay attention to in this town. So I'm just going to throw this video out and move on down the road because there's bigger fish to fry. Well, the whole town got defensive. All of the police department, the mayor's office, the city council, the fire department, they all got mad. And then people from Paris started contacting me and saying, hey, man, they are attacking you left and right. I said, well, shoot, I didn't even really do nothing. So I was like, you know what? Since they're trying to get my attention, maybe I'm being invited to the party. So I started digging. And so then I found one of their city councilmen who seems to have a lot of things to say about me. I dug into his little life. And because he was one of the loudest ones. And so I thought, well, since you're going to be the loudest ones, you're going to be the loudest one talking about me. I'm going to make sure that you're the one I talk about first. So, he even put it on his personal Facebook page, which is an ethics violation because as an elected official, you're not supposed to attack constituency. Even though I'm not from Kentucky, it's very unethical to go after a private citizen. Not only that, I have media credentials. I'm on the news. I'm on the international news. So like this guy, he must not have done his homework that good. But I didn't even have this guy's name on my list. I didn't even know who he was until he started talking. I had to figure out who is this dude? Oh, he's a city councilman. He's the former police chief. Oh, so there's a police department problem that he's trying to cover up. So I collected a lot of info in a very short amount of time, had a lot of help instantly. Once he did that, the community came alive and started giving me information. So I ran around. I was trying to confirm a lot of things. I found a lot of things out. I found out that he's also on the I Have a Lot of Affairs team. And he's been caught several times having affairs. He when he retired from the police chief, he went to work as security for this farm. The farmer who owns the farm caught him sleeping with his wife. So that became a big ordeal that they tried to make hush hush. Since then, that farmer has died and that woman has left the country. So it turned into a big embarrassment thing. So he also has a son that's going through a Medicaid fraud case that he's trying to cover up. There's also a PI that's looking into him that a private citizen has hired. The PI has reached out to me. So there's a lot of stuff being covered up there. So there's also this investigation that a private outside firm came in to do on corruption that just happened to have just concluded. So this is what they're trying to keep hidden. So I did an Open Records Act request on this specific document. So I'm waiting to hear back if they're going to give me the runaround. They've only got 5 days to get me this document. And I was told by a little bird inside that office that They don't want that document to get released. And I have the names of every single person who touched that document that said, nope, this is not getting released to the public. But I'm going to release it to the public since they pissed me off. So it confirms illegal activity by the chief, assistant chief, and both captains. The report is 107 pages long and also has been sent to the Kentucky Attorney General. So if they don't give it to me, I'm going to appeal it to the Attorney General's office, who has a copy of it. So the report was also turned over to the Commonwealth Attorney in case there's a prosecution that could come out of it, which they're trying to cover up. But I'm going to release it and I'm going to read it. And if there's a potential crime committed, which it sounds like there is, because the report came back as that there were illegal activity being conducted by the police department. So the city manager reviewed the report. He did not want the information released. So the mayor and city manager refused to move forward, so it did not make the city look bad. The police chief is a guy named Myron Thomas. So when I first went after Myron Thomas, they automatically came after me and told me I'm a racist. So I said, look, man, I live on the south side of Atlanta. I'm not saying you can't be racist on the south side of Atlanta, but I'm around nothing but black people. All my friends here are black. I think that's you're the first black person that I've actually looked into since I've been in Kentucky. You know how many white people I've thrown under the bus? Hundreds. So no, this is not about race. This is about corruption, doing the right thing, or not doing the right thing. So I don't care what color you are. If you're corrupt, you're corrupt. Corrupt don't have colors. So like I said, Myron Thomas, he's one of the biggest culprits here. He's trying to cover a lot of stuff up. There's a lot of stolen city money, mainly with like the top four brass. They like the chief, the assistant chief, and the two captains. They are basically working part-time and getting a full-time paycheck. So there's that. And there's a lot of other stuff, but I'm not going to get into detail until I've read the full report. These are just some of the excerpt stuff that was kind of funneled to me. So there's a lot. This is going to get exciting. Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you agree with me. Corruption doesn't have colors. You're either corrupt or you're not. I don't think the prison systems care what color you are when you get there. You're either you're in prison for committing a crime. Anyway, so the next thing I want to cover today is, so in Congress this week, and I'm gonna really dig into this because it's something that I'm passionate about myself, because I'm a health and fitness guy, and I love that RFK is going against the grain on the food that we're ingesting and making it harder for these chemicals to get put in our food. I'm passionate about it. I know a lot of my friends are passionate about it. A lot of my gym buddies, a lot of my people from back home, a lot of people are passionate because we don't want to have to continually worry if we have trash in our food. That's going to give us cancer. That's going to kill us. That's going to weaken our hearts. We're trying to live and live healthy. So RFK, he has to go testify at one of the committees, at the Senate Finance Committee. He basically got ganged up on by Republicans and Democrats, and we're gonna discuss that. So Senate Democrats found unlikely allies in Senate Republicans during a fiery hearing where Health and Human Service Secretary RFK Jr. was grilled for his stance on vaccines. Okay, so my friend Gina back home, well, she lives in Dayton. We were talking about this the other day, and she didn't vaccinate any of her kids. I'm vaccinated, but I never got the COVID. Because back then we didn't think the regular vaccines you get going into school were that big of a deal. But now we know that they may have been a big deal. But I never got the COVID vaccine, and my friend Gina, she doesn't believe in vaccines. So we were talking about that, which when you logically think about it, why would I want to inject inject a vaccine of the flu in me that's supposed to keep me from getting the flu, but you have to give me the flu to get rid of the flu. Like, make that shit make sense. I've never been able to wrap my head around how that makes any sense. And they're like, well, it's for the next strand. Well, how do you know what the next strand is? How do you know it hasn't mutated into something else? Like that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I think we've just well, doggone it. Had one of my DEA people just text me. But and then my dad, he's scolding me. But it's all right. He has a point. But let's go back into this before I ramble on. Right. Thanks, Rachel. It doesn't make sense, does it? Vaccines don't make sense. I'm glad Rachel's here to co-sign everything that I'm saying. It makes me feel better about the information. So Kennedy's testimony before the Senate Finance Committee on Thursday was billed as a discussion on President Trump's healthcare agenda, but it quickly turned into a tongue lashing from lawmakers who accused the secretary of lying to the panel about how he would operate the HHS and Center for Disease Control and Prevention. So I'm not going to say too much about that. I think the CDC is a criminal organization. That's my personal feelings on it. I think they're complicit in the COVID stuff. But that's my opinion. Don't sue me. While a barrage of heated exchanges between Kennedy and Democrats were expected, it was heat from Senate Republicans on the panel, including a pair of doctors turned legislators who stood out. And we're going to dig into them because I've got a lot to say about both of them. I support vaccines. I'm a doctor. Vaccines work, says Senate Majority Whip John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming. Secretary Kennedy, in your confirmation hearings, you promised to uphold the highest standards for vaccines. Since then, I have grown deeply concerned. The public has seen measles outbreaks. Where the hell are these measles outbreaks at? I haven't heard that one yet. Leadership at the National Institute of Health, which is the NIH, which is the head of that was Dr. Fauci. So he's quoting the NIH, which is Dr. Fauci's old organization, which we know is a lying, cheating, murdering train wreck. But we'll continue. They're questioning the use of mRNA vaccines. That the recently confirmed director of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention was fired. Americans don't know who to rely on because they did fire the CDC director this past week, which everybody in Atlanta, or at least the ones that they paid to be out there, were out there protesting. When asked what he would do to ensure that vaccine guidance was clear, Kennedy said, "We're going to make it clear, evidence-based and trustworthy for the first time in history." That's not funny to make fun of him, but that's how he talks. So if I'm going to impersonate people, I got to be accurate. The hearing came on the heels of a week of turmoil at the CDC, where Kennedy fired former CDC director Susan Manarez, which led to several senior officials resigning, sayonara, from the agency. Before that, the secretary had cleared out the federal government's vaccine recommendation panel and handpicked his own members to serve, and he also moved to cancel $500 million in mRNA vaccine contracts. Now, I know what Kennedy's doing here. He's putting the decision for vaccines into the hands of the people, into the parents of these kids. I think that's the way to do it. Don't force these people to get vaccines. I think it should be the choice of the parent and not a mandate of the parent. So Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, we're going to talk about him too, also serves as the chair for Senate's Health Committee and was the decisive vote to confirm Kennedy. So he was a Kennedy supporter. Now he's criticizing him. He argued that Kennedy's actions on vaccines appeared to counter his support for Trump's Operation Warp Speed, a sweeping executive program by the Trump administration at the onset of COVID-19 pandemic that jump-started the production of vaccines. Now, that's not fair for him to say. Bill Cassidy's wrong in his comparison, because when COVID happened, it happened so fast and so rapid that Trump had to do something fast. And at the time, we didn't know that Dr. Fauci was a psycho. So Trump said, Dr. Fauci, let's do something. We need to do something fast. So then that's when we didn't realize that Fauci was in on the whole COVID situation with the NIH and the Wuhan lab. We didn't know that at the time. Now we know that. But Fauci went ahead and started heading this up. Let's get these vaccines out as fast as possible. So he can't. When Operation Warp Speed was put in play, it was a great idea. But then we all started to think with our brains and said, wait a minute, these vaccines have not been tested. There's all these issues, the long-term effects, we don't know what they are. There's all these things that can happen. And so, yes, Operation Warp Speed ended up not being a good idea. I'm going to say it. I'm a Trump supporter, but Operation Warp Speed ended up not being a good idea because Dr. Fauci screwed it all up. He should have put the brakes on. The CDC should have put the brakes on and said, no, we can't do this. It's too fast. We can't just make these vaccines up that have not been fully vetted. And they pushed them through. So he noted that both Trump and Kennedy have vowed radical transparency when it came to the administration's healthcare agenda, but countered that the secretary's move to put new members on the advisory committee on immunization practices appeared to be a conflict of interest. Whatever. Then he said, I'm concerned, though, because many of those that you have nominated for the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices Board have received revenue as serving as expert witnesses as plaintiffs for attorneys suing vaccine makers. I don't see a problem with that. If we put people who are paid witnesses for suing people for suing vaccines, that seems like a conflict of interest. Real quickly, do you agree with that? Kennedy said, no, I don't. Arguing that while it may seem like a bias, it was not a conflict of interest. They're just people who align with Kennedy's plan. That's all it is. Not every Republican doctor on the panel went after Kennedy. Senator Roger Marshall from Kansas, Republican, has long been an ally of the secretary's and gave him room to address accusations that he was anti-vaccine. Saying I'm anti-vaccine is like saying I'm anti-medicine, Kennedy said. I'm pro-medicine, but I understand some medicines harm people. Some of them have risk. Some of them have benefits that outweigh those risks for certain populations. And that's true with vaccines. I think that's a fair statement, but who am I? I'm not a doctor. So Marshall agreed that he was not anti-vax either, and he listed several vaccines that he believed were good, but argued that it was the transparency and approach to vaccines under the HHS and CDC that he was after. So that's fair. He can ask for transparency. I don't have a problem with that. What I feel the difference is sometimes my friends across the aisle feel like there's a one-size-fits-all that they should be telling parents what to do, Marshall said. And what you and I are fighting for is that we want to empower parents to make these decisions. 100% agree. So let's go into these two idiot politicians. John Barrasso, Republican from Wyoming. And this is what I do best. Look at people's money. $530,000 was donated to him by health professionals. $446,000 was donated to him by lobbyists. $308,000 donated to his campaign from pharmaceutical and health products. $286,000 from insurance companies. $127,000 from health services and HMOs. He wants to talk about conflicts of interest. He's a walking conflict of interest. His money from the healthcare world totals $1.7 million. Let's talk about Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana. See, these liberals, they want to get on here and say that all I do is attack Democrats all the time. Not true. I attack the crooked Republicans as well. Bill Cassidy, Republican from Louisiana, $1.3 million donated to him from health professionals, $712,000 from the pharmaceutical health products industry, $496,000 from health services and HMOs, $429,000 from insurance companies, $409,000 from hospitals and nursing homes, $397,000 from lobbyists, $147,000 from crop production and basic processing, $128,000 from the food and beverage industry, totaling $4 million that have been given to him from related industries. So who's compromised? Bill Cassidy, you're compromised. You're a walking conflict of interest. Now, let's talk about CDC contractors, because that's what we all want to know about. ICF International was awarded a $35 million across 3 contracts for HIV surveillance, cancer registries, and tobacco-controlled initiatives. So they do digital transformation, data management, health surveillance, communications. They are a big, big company that works hand in hand with the CDC to help create databases for the CDC. So Tetra Tech frequently engaged for technical support in public health and infrastructure projects. So all these companies that I'm about to talk about, and some of them are very interesting, they are part of this big NGO scheme to infiltrate the CDC, which the CDC is not even a government entity. It's its own, it's a business that the government contracts with. So it's its own entity, and it's a problem because now private companies are contracting in there and they get to buy their influence. Battelle Memorial Institute is known for biodefense and infectious disease response capabilities. Did you hear me? Biodefense. General Dynamics. What would a tank and missile and aerospace company be doing invested in the CDC, I wonder? So they support the CDC's digital infrastructure and data security. So they have the ability to have the data of every person's medical records in the country. There you go. Northrop Grumman, another defense contractor, provides systems for disease tracking and data analysis. Could you possibly be using that to identify target areas to attack a certain susceptible area that is susceptible to certain diseases? I don't know. I don't trust defense contractors. RTI International works on behavioral health, substance abuse, and epidemiology studies. Some word I can't say. So there you go. Those are the biggest contractors of the CDC. Very sketchy. I don't trust the CDC. I don't trust General Dynamics or Northrop Grumman or any of these other companies. I don't trust Bill Cassidy, and I don't trust John Barrasso. So there you go. Now, there's this weird, and I have yet to really talk about this case because I'm waiting on something to happen with it. And September 19th, we'll get more information. But as of right now, so there's this in Laurel County, Kentucky, where I've been looking. This weird event happened, and everyone was like, "Whoa, that's weird." But like, no one, it didn't make, this thing did not make national news. But I'm going to talk about it today because I just found out that there's more to the story. There's a guy named Scotty Shelton. So in August of 2025, last month, federal agents investigating drug trafficking uncovered what they described as a torture chamber on the property of a man named Scotty Shelton in London, Kentucky. Okay, so here's what we know. DEA agents were following leads related to Shelton's alleged involvement in the Eastern Kentucky drug trade. They arrived at his property and noticed a strong odor near a white sheet metal structure behind the main house, described as similar to a decaying corpse. So, upstairs in this metal structure, they discovered a cell-like room. It was a jail cell, outfitted with handcuffs, rope, firearms. It was described as resembling a torture chamber. Downstairs, they found a deer carcass and a lot of disturbed earth. It had a dirt floor. While digging, agents uncovered what appeared to be a human bone. Weird, huh? Shelton allegedly claimed the remains were Indian bones brought to the property and admitted to burying drugs around the area. They dug up so many drugs, and we're going to talk about that. Authorities reportedly recovered 6,000 pills, 1,200 grams of methamphetamine during the search, and that's what they could find. So this guy's 53 years old. He lived off of Southern Oaks Road, about 8 miles east of London, Kentucky. Interestingly, Shelton had reportedly served as a DEA informant in the past. This guy's a DEA informant. That connection may have given him insight into law enforcement tactics, though it clearly didn't keep him out of trouble. London, Kentucky is covered by the DEA London Resident Office, which is part of the Louisville Field Division. This office was established to specifically target drug trafficking and organized crime in southeast Kentucky. So the DEA London Resident Office is located in London. There's also an FBI office in London. So all this stuff happens, right? Where was the FBI in this? The FBI in London does nothing. That is the most worthless FBI office in the face of the earth. So these offices, the Louisville District Office is part of the Detroit Field Division, and they work closely with the Kentucky State Police, who's worthless, the Laurel County Sheriff's Department, who's worthless, the London Police Department, who's ran by Randall Weddle, and the ATF, IRS, and other federal agencies. So now the weirdest part of this is you might think that this is just some hillbilly that lives up in a holler and lives in like a shack or a log cabin. No, this dude lived in a $1 million mansion. This metal building they're talking about was like away from the property. I don't know how many acres this guy had, but he was living large. No job. Just lives in this big mansion, like this old antebellum mansion out on the side of this hill with this metal building that's got a torture chamber and a jail cell in it with human bones in it. This case doesn't make national news. How does this not make national news? None of the local news stations in Kentucky did cover it, but how this didn't make national news is beyond me. This is a huge, huge story that gives everyone all of the weird vibes. Now, I have been told that there's more to the story. So once I get that whole story from a very, very reliable resource who very much is in the know. So yes, follow the money, Rachel says. We will follow the money. But this is a developing case. September 19th. Look, this guy, if you look back at this guy, this guy's a ghost before, they can't tell you anything. There's nothing. I can't find nothing on this guy. They don't know where he was born. They don't know nothing about him. Nothing about the case that he became a DEA agent on or a DEA informant on. Nothing. There's no information on this guy. He just showed up. Nobody in London knows who the hell this guy is. They're like, we didn't even know who lived there. So there is so much to know about this guy. And I would be willing to bet that now knowing that he's a drug informant, I don't know who he had to have been selling drugs to somebody in London. I wonder who controls the town of London. Very interesting. I have two major suspects that I would like to point the finger at, but I don't know yet enough about it to do that. So we'll wait and see what transpires. But it's a weird case, and I think it deserves national attention. But I'm going to start working on my next project. We'll see what comes out this week. There's a lot of stuff coming up. And now that we're in September, and hopefully I'll get way more followers because it's going to start getting cold and no one's going to go outside and play anymore. And they're going to stay inside and listen to me do podcasts and make TikTok videos. Sounds like a great plan. But that's all I've got for this week. I'm going to go watch football. Everybody have a good day. Have a great work week. And be safe out there. I'm out. Peace.